for the slight delay. We're having all sorts of problems with this platform. My name is Nigel Catterson. I'll be doing the presentation tonight. David Williamson was going to be here to introduce me, but having problems getting hooked up into the system. So you've got to put up with me introducing myself. I've got a varied background. I've done a presentation to the IMechEs on probably about half a dozen occasions in the past. Tonight's presentation is about the progress that we've made moving forward in terms of Derwent Forest. So my background is very varied, as well as being the chairman of Derwent Forest Development Consortium and Utropia. I'm also the chairman of Solway Energy Gateway. And I also have the privilege of being the chairman of IMechE, which is a development company operating out of West Cumbria. All of the projects are very much designed to enhance community benefit. So I'm going to get on with the presentation now and hope everything goes according to plan. And just 1 second. There we go. Okay. I hope everybody can see that. So this is what we're about. Derwent Forest is the site. I will explain to you exactly where that is and its location and how we intend to take that forward. But the project Derwent Forest and what we're doing there was born out of a concept that I developed in 1995. So this has been a very long journey for me. So Utropia was the concept, and the idea behind the concept was that at some point we're going to need a model to show us how we might more effectively move forward going into the future. So in 95...
Sorry, Nigel, your screen isn't sharing. Could you upload your presentation, please?
What do you want me to do?
The bottom icon in the middle, it says share. You can share your content from that area.
Oh, sorry. Right. Okay. Have you got it? Have you got it now?
Not yet.
Is that it? You got that?
Not yet. It should be share content, and then it'll ask you to share a certain application or a window.
Let's see that one. Does that work?
There we go. Yeah, if you put it in presentation mode, then we'll be able to see.
Okay, all right. Presentation from the beginning. That should do it. Is that it?
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, everybody. This is a brand new platform to me. I'm certainly totally unused to it. So apologies. So what I've just said still counts. This is what the project is about. Just moving on. The concept of Utropia was very much born out of a name that an art student came up with in the late 90s. And it was basically, without them knowing it, it's an amalgam of the two words eutrophication and also utopia. So I think it's very appropriate for what we're trying to do. So we know we've made a bit of a mess of things, but it doesn't mean to say that we can't strive for the ideal. So the concept itself is very much about a process. It's about a particular space that you create, and it's very much about a system change. So we use the word a transition towards sustainable relationships. I think to some extent, the word sustainable is something that some of us struggle with now. An American once said to me, I don't know about sustainable. I think the word flourishable is a far better word. And I would agree with him. So that's what we're aspiring to do, is to build a model of flourishing living, working and being. So you can see there that what our aims and objectives are is to basically create a microcosm within a space of how life and work and pleasure, interaction and just being can be done in balance with nature. And that's been very key. And I think, given the times that we're living in, our connection to nature has become ever more important to us. The world of technology is wonderful, but what it does do, unfortunately, for the bulk of the time, is to distance us from the natural world. And this is very much about trying to reconnect us with the world and nature and find a more naturalized way of doing what we do. We're all very conscious of how buildings are produced now and the way in which they're produced, modern housing estates. They're very much constructed to maximize profit for the developer, as distinct from creating a real space that people can feel connected to and feel proud of. And that's what we're trying to do, really, is to reconnect with the interrelatedness of everything in terms of how we do things. So the utopian philosophy, just what I've said, artificial environments disconnect us from the natural world, and that's exactly what is happening. And we need to take our learnings from the past and understand they brought us to where we are now, but we can do things in a better way. So what we are trying to do is to model anything that we do to be sustainable. And if it's not sustainable, we shouldn't be doing it. The whole project is, above all, driven by excellence and doing the very best that we can. So it's not being driven by profit. I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail, because this is very much about trying to make sure that we leave a very sound legacy behind us, showing that we can do things better. Clearly, ethical and environmental sourcing are key to what we do. We also want to minimize our environmental impact for obvious reasons. We believe in the root of democracy and being open, transparent, and accountable in terms of everything that we do, and constantly to change, learning from what hasn't worked for us and what has worked for us, and eventually end up with a model of leadership by example. So that's what's very much underpinning the project. What you see in front of you now are the Utropia Foundation principles. This is something that's very dear to my heart, and if I'm about anything, it's about this. I believe very much that if we get the how we do things right, then the what we do will follow as a natural consequence. So I think too often we're too consumed by the what we do, and we don't necessarily give very much attention to how we do it. So the whole thing, if you look at the top wheel circle in the center of the screen, which is the intention wheel, the intention of this project and the intention of what we're doing at Derwent Forest is to create a sense of unity. So that's a sense of unity with the environment, it's the sense of unity with the world around you, and above all, it's about a sense of unity with yourself, because unless you've got that, nothing else is really very achievable from that. The consideration wheel, which is the next slide you can see, going to the right, is very much about looking at how we do things. So we're in the present space, and before we move into the future space about thinking what we do, we take the consideration into the past and say, well, what's worked for us in the past and what hasn't worked? Where do we need to move on from? And armed with that knowledge, you come back to the present and say, okay, now we've taken everything into consideration, we can look at the future, because we're armed and we're aware of what we've done in the past. The next wheel coming down to the bottom right-hand corner, the values wheel, is something that really kind of sparked all the rest of the wheels as well. This was a piece of work that I was involved in when I was a franchisee of the Body Shop back in the early 90s. The Body Shop asked me to be involved in evolving a values code for them that would unify the company. It was a very interesting exercise, and I worked with about half a dozen other people, and it over a course of about 9 or 10 months, we came up with something similar to what you see in front of you. It wasn't as extensive as this, but it was the basis for it. So as far as values are concerned, we start from the premise of saying self-worth is the most important value of all. If you don't feel a sense of self-worth, then it's very difficult for you to positively interact with the rest of the world. So the aspects of creating self-worth we determined were respect, support, integrity, and kindness. And I hope you would agree that if you deal with people with those key values, then you create a sense of worth, with self-worth within the person that you're interacting with. So these are very key to what we're doing. We're also using this values wheel within the context of the IMechE company now, which was Britain's Energy Coast. And that becomes our golden thread running through the company. And we believe that it's important we are held to account by how we display our values. The purpose wheel, again, this is a generic purpose wheel in terms of what Utropia is looking to achieve through observing first and foremost, and then applying the lessons that you've learned from observing. You start to evolve and then flourish. And through all of that process, you start to release potential within you. Unfortunately, we don't normally have a process for doing this, but this is a tried and tested process that is shown to release a lot of potential within individuals. So this is very much the purpose wheel behind Utropia. And finally, the governing wheel. Again, you can see vision is in the center of that. So this is all about linking vision at one end and unity at the other. So we have growth as being a key part of that. Now, the growth that we refer to within the governing wheel is not so much external growth as internal growth. That is equally important, and unfortunately, it's something we give very little, we pay very little attention to within our society. So within Utropia, that's what we're trying to encourage. Sustainability we touched on, and we know how key that is, that everything's got to be sustainable. Developing sound and robust partnerships are key to what we do. Learning drives what we do and is embedded in everything that we do, and to make sure that learning is at the heart of everything that happens. Maintenance is an interesting one, sitting opposite growth. Certainly from a lot of the projects I've seen in this country, particularly the Millennium projects and so on, and very sustainable, should we say, visitor attractions and so on, you can always tell the ones that do very well and are very successful because they are maintained properly. Unfortunately, maintenance is not something that is always particularly given an awful lot of airspace. Relationships are key. Forming the right relationships in the right way are very key to what we do. Creating community in everything that we do is key to our happiness as human beings, and I think we can see that through the way that communities come together in times of adversity. Unfortunately, what we're trying to do with Utropia is to make sure that we've got the right environment, that community thrives, whether we're in adversity or just in our day-to-day lives. And finally, governance. So the governance there is there as a final check to say, is everything that we are doing, does it all fit within each one of these foundation principles? So it's a back check on everything that we do. This brings us on to trying to move on to the next slide, and it's not letting me do this. Natalie, help. I can't move on. Can you help me?
Could you try closing down the app and then reopening it? That might work.
Which app? Sorry, which app?
The PowerPoint
Oh,
app.
the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm pushing escape and it's not allowing me to escape. Backspace, it's not allowing me in at all.
Do the arrow keys work? So if you use the right arrow.
Yep, no, nothing.
Right. Could you press Control Alt Delete?
Okay. Okay, I'm out. Yeah.
Perfect.
Cancel. Give me the there we go. Okay, thank you. Right. Apologies. We will get there eventually. Okay, so where these foundation principles sit within is an atmosphere, and so the atmosphere that we try to create around what we're doing is very much about transparency, creating a state of transition, going from where we are right now to where we need to be in the future, to be inclusive, taking everything and everybody with us, to be holistic, considering all things in that process, to be excellent in the delivery that we make, and to be very conscious of what we're doing every step of the way, to be balanced and accepting. And I think the accepting word is very important for me, because this is not about saying we're right and you're wrong. This is about saying the world is the way it is at the moment, whether we like it or not. And in order to change things, we need to accept where we are right now and move on from that. Okay, so the vision for Derwent Forest is very much about developing an environment that, you know, as we've already said, creates that connection with the real world. It's balanced, and it's very much designed to help communities more readily evolve and come together and flourish. A lot of the way that we are building and putting people together at the moment doesn't do that. It separates people and isolates people, and we believe that there's a better way of achieving a community result. I've said about we want to become an exemplar of how society can move forward, and about the legacy project. It's important that if people don't feel a connection and a sense of ownership to this project, we will fail. So everything that we are trying to do here is about encouraging people to feel part of this and to play a part in the evolution of this project. That's very, very key to how we are looking to operate. And we want to take a wide range of development opportunities, which I will go through with you in a moment. And of course, everything is based around the foundation principles, as I said before. I think I've got the same problem. It's locked up. I will do the same thing again. Okay, so this is Derwent Forest. The view you can see in the top right was taken in let me think, about 2003, I think, this aerial shot, or 2002 maybe, and it was you can see Maryport in the very background and the Solway Firth, but more or less where you see the white line running round is the site itself. It's 1,070 acres. It's the largest brownfield site in the north of England, so it's very significant in size. It had originally about 350 buildings on it, which were all munitions stores, and they were all connected with a narrow gauge railway. It also had a main gauge railway that came on site, and armaments were stored here for naval purposes. So it's got a rich history. Prior to that, the site was used very much for mining. So there were pits, mostly open coal pits, and a couple of deep mines on site. So it had been in the ownership of the MOD from 1934, and the deep mine had been sunk in 1833. So that had been operational for about 100 years. It still has quite a deal of coal on the site. I should have, sorry, I've made an error there. So the Derwent Forest looking west should read, actually, it's looking north. Looking west, as you see, is the picture that is in the bottom left-hand corner. So moving on, let's give you a sense of the site. The building that you see there in the inset is a rail transfer station, and it's typical of the buildings that are on site. 50% of them are brick built. The rest are asbestos, cement asbestos built with a wood frame. So we've got quite a challenge in terms of clearing the asbestos from the site and dealing with that, which we've got some, fairly advanced plans on now. The site has got a stunning view, as you can probably see vaguely in the top right-hand corner, overlooking the Northern Fells. And it's a view that you can't see from anywhere else other than from the site. So it's got a very, it's a very special place. South-facing site, and here we go. Now, this will give you more of an idea of what I was saying about the colliery. It says 1837, but it was actually 1873, but it was actually 1833. And you can see the location of all of the buildings on site. Most of those are still in place. The buildings at the top of the site, top of the picture, are very much built in the 50s. So they were post-war. What we're doing in terms of the development, what I'm showing you now are basically the development to date is based around 24 self-build plots, which you're seeing in the top right-hand corner. Those have, I think I heard, I had an email to say another 7 have been sold today. So I think there's probably about 2 or 3 left now, but they've been very successful on a south-facing slope overlooking the Northern Fells. Very generous plots. Story homes have been developing that site and making sure that the plots are suitable for self-builders. So that process is underway now. Story will be exiting from the development post this phase 1. The phase 2 development that you see in the center of the screen is the proposed planning that we're putting on now for the next stage of development. So we expect there to be detailed planning going in now next month, and all being well, we've had outline planning in, which has been accepted, and we've been working very closely with the planners. But it will give you a sense of how we're trying to create community around the concept of village greens. We've still to look at this in terms of trying to make sure that the car doesn't dominate the living space. In other words, the car can move about, but it will have to take a secondary role apart from the main access roads. That kind of gives you a sense of what we're looking at the moment. Mixed tenure housing, everything from possibly semi-retirement homes through to some possibly 4 or 5 bedroom homes, and also some affordable in there as well. On the extreme left-hand side of the screen, you can see the initial stages of development, which are the 2. This shows the 2 developments that I've just spoken about together in one screen, and it gives you a sort of sense of the overall site. There, it takes up a very small space actually within the whole site. Moving forward, the settlement 1 area is the one that we've just been looking at, and that is extended in this diagram here. So the intention is for us to develop possibly circa 2,000 plus homes. So it's a sizable development. that will include a school and various other things to support the communities. So it's very important to us as well that we work with the existing communities. So this is not seen to be in any way, shape or form a gated community or society. It needs to be fully integrated with what is around it. So this is taken from the master plan, which is still very fluid, and you can see that we're looking to actually put some areas of water on site, and the intention is for the site to be half developed with buildings and lodges and so on, and half of it to be retained as managed wilderness. This will give you a sense of its size. You can see that the architects have actually dropped into the space of Derwent Forest all of these various other tourist attractions, and you can see the various sizes of them. For example, the Windfall Forest of Centre Parks, which is quite a significant size in and of itself. The landscape or the Landschaftspark Duisburg Nord, that's a 400 acre development, the site of an old blast furnace, which has been hugely successful in terms of attracting visitors in, because they've allowed it to rewild itself, and it's been a very, very successful project in Germany. So we're taking some of the cues and leads from that. The Eden project you'll be aware of, and a lot of what we're doing was closely aligned to the Eden project initially, in terms of saying, well, how do we attract that level of visitor? We already get a very significant number of visitors into the Lake District, and we want to capitalize on that opportunity by bringing more visitors onto site and having amenities for them. This next slide gives you a sense of probably what's inspired me, I should say, rather than anybody else. The development you see on the left-hand side is a place called the Windfalls in Bishop's Castle in Shropshire. Bishop's Castle is a lovely village, very artsy. This was an old quarry at one stage, and it ended up with 40 dwellings on it. You can see they're very, very different and unusual. They're actually quite close together, a lot of them. It's a fantastic space, a hugely successful community. There's about 40, as I say, 40 dwellings, and they range from probably in the region of 200,000 up to 650. But having been and visited it a couple of times and spoken to the residents there, you're looking at a very, very happy community and very happy with the space that they occupy. The village, the Windfalls, has its own spiral orchard on site and its own allotments. And a lot of what happens within the communities is very much communally based. And you get a sense of this vision of being able to move around the space without having to be constantly worrying about where a car is or isn't. It's been very, very thoughtfully done, this, and has been very successful. The picture in the top right-hand corner was developed by a good friend of mine, who's an ex-Aston Martin engineer at Deanscales in Cumbria. And he came up with this concept of a straw bale house, which he's built as I think he only got permission for it as a studio and a workshop. But it's a fabulous house. Cost in terms of materials was around about the £30,000 mark, and it's the space on the inside is about 14 meters by 7.5 meters over the 2 floors. The upstairs space is fantastic, almost needs no heating whatsoever. The straw bales do a brilliant job. And he built this, he's 75, 76, I think now, but he built it all on his own. The only thing he couldn't do in the building of this house was actually the lime plaster render, which he got somebody in for. But it's a really, really good concept. And I think I just put this in to show, I think, what is possible, creating interesting, useful spaces that don't cost a fortune. I've just got a few pictures to show you now, kind of to coming to the end of the talk now, just to give you a sense of how we see Derwent Forest evolving going forwards. The top left-hand corner shows you a photograph of part of an old building that we've got. So we want to take a lot of reference from using the old buildings to keep the blast bunds that are currently on the site and to work within those and repurpose them, and to keep the sense of history around all of the site and tell that history. And it's, you know, it's only fitting that it was used for armaments and everything else, and we are trying to move this forward into a space of a cohesive harmony moving forward. Again, this one, another picture towards the spoil heap. The site has a spoil heap on it, which we would like to be able to repurpose and again turn into a visitor attraction in the fullness of time, and possibly put something of significance on the top of this. And again, it's a bit of an unstable heap at the moment, but we intend to stabilize all of that and to, as I say, to repurpose it. And this is another one. This is another slide showing towards the magazine that you can see in the top left-hand corner. That's one of the magazines that runs through the site. And again, this gives you kind of sense of the sort of buildings we're looking to develop and how we see them interacting with one another. So we're trying to be very, very considered in our approach to everything that we're doing to make sure that it aligns with our aspirations and it's completely in line with the principles. And this is about sharing that sense of excellence and people feeling proud of the space that they live in, and ultimately creating a magnet that will attract people, like-minded people, to come to this space because of how they see and believe they can contribute to a more cohesive world going forward. And hopefully what we will produce from this is the start. We will create the environment for this type of model to prosper going forward in the future. It's a long-term project. We've got a lot of support from government at the moment in terms of they're showing a great deal of interest. Homes England have shown a lot of interest in what we're doing. But I would repeat the fact that this is very much about creating a legacy. So what the Development Consortium will do going forward in the future, majority of the shareholding, anywhere between 51 and 60%, is still to be determined, will go into a fund. And that shareholding will then mean that the site and everything that it does going forward in the future is protected for future generations. That fund and the receipts from the profits from the enterprise itself will go into the fund and will be dispersed into the wider community over time. So this is very much about a collective thing, about us saying, this is what we want to do going forward in the future. We want input from people that are interested and concerned about where the future is going and what we can do going forward. So again, thank you very much for listening. I apologize for the glitches that there have been. As I say, I'm not used to using this platform at all. I see that there's a range of questions coming in. So if you will bear with me, I will try and get to these questions and see what I can do to answer them for you. So again, thank you for being with me, and thank you for allowing me to share this vision with you. I will come out of that and hopefully we can go there. Right. Now, Natalie, can you help me with regard to where the questions have gone to?
Hi, Nigel. All the questions have gone into the chat. So if you expand that from the right-hand side tab.
Right-hand side tab, where's that? So, oh, okay, got that, bottom corner, okay. Okay, right, so I'll just work through these and see where we go. Okay. So if I'm right here, yeah. Right, you mentioned about the wintles and single mums and so on. Yeah, I take your point. What we are doing is we are looking at affordable. We are looking at hopefully constructing or having on the site a factory that will produce the housing. So we're looking at off-site construction, modular construction. We're also looking at how we can make sure that housing is affordable and that people, if they feel an affinity with what we're doing, can live at Derwent Forest. So we're looking at cross subsidy potentially in building, and how we can best utilize that going forward. It might not be evident in the very first phase of the 71 homes, because basically we have to capitalize ourselves and put ourselves in a position whereby we can do everything that we want to do further down the line. I think the fact that we're getting such good support and such good response from Homes England would suggest that we should be well on the way, and it's quite possible for us to do that. So I would hope single mums will be able to. If we can't do that, then I shall be exceptionally disappointed. Okay, right, what have we got here? What have we got? Okay. Oh God, I'm trying to get here. Principles. Some principles seem. Okay, this is a private one. Say such as. Okay.
Sorry, please, Nigel, could you read out the question in their
Yeah,
entirety
I am
before
doing. There's
answering? Thank you.
there's a private question here, but it some principles of development seem to build nicely with other sustainable community examples, such as the eco village at Clough Jordan. What's your perspective on mandating the use of sustainable building materials instead of more modern construction methods? Absolutely. That's exactly what we are doing. We want to make sure that all building materials are sustainable, in as far as it's possible to do that at this time, and to be open and transparent about what we're doing. So if we make mistakes or if we have to compromise ourselves in any way, shape, or form, we will be open and upfront about that. So yeah, absolutely, we will be. We to all the developers we're talking to at the moment, we're looking at light gauge steel framing, and SIPS panels. So all of that's very much on our agenda at the moment. So I'll just. Okay, this is very clunky, this. Okay, right. Has the whole of the has the whole this is has the whole of the 425 hectares been cleared of buildings, or is it progressive as development evolves? The answer to that one, no, it's not been cleared yet. It will be cleared, I hope, by the time that the 71 homes have been built, because we are looking to clean up the site to make it safe for public access as part of the next stage. So our objectives right in front of us at the moment are to get the next stage of development underway, to get planning consent for that. We also want to be in a position then, from the receipts of that and working with Homes England, to get the revenue we need to clean up the site. So those are the two very key priorities for us. The other key priority is actually to deal with the access to the site, because clearly if you know the area at all, there's a lot of narrow roads, a lot of congestion, particularly in Broughton Village. And the only way we can unlock this site, and the only way that we can develop into the future, is by having a dedicated access to the site. So we are on with conversations with Highways England and also Homes England about what that might look like and how we might achieve that. And probably the best guess at the moment is that's likely to be a link off the A66, which would involve a new bridge and a dedicated road, which Homes England seem to be quite up for, so which is a good thing. Okay. What is the socio-democratic demographic mix is envisaged for the site? It's the whole spectrum. That's what we're going for. This site needs to be accessible and achievable for anybody that has a desire to live there. So I don't see anybody being, and clearly what we're looking for is people that are very much attuned and in line with our thinking in terms of how we move forward and the exemplar that we want to create going forward in the future. So, right, okay. Where are the employment opportunities for residents? Well, that's going to be an ongoing thing. So besides the accommodation that will be provided for the residents, there will also be a significant offering of holiday lodges. So we envisage quite a tourist attraction developing on site, as well as some manufacturing attractions. And I would hope, I don't know what, we have no details in terms of what sort of numbers of jobs we expect to create on site, but we hope that we will be creating a very significant number of jobs on site. That is our expectation. Keen to know the timing for build out, also whether mechanisms such as co-housing and community-led housing, CLT, is envisaged, any support for self-builders. I'm very close to the CLT movement myself, and I'm hoping that once we get through the next phase, that we can start to look at a community-led aspect to further development. It ticks everybody's agenda, and we need to do better than we are doing at the moment in terms of encouraging community-led initiatives, because there's some great ones around, and I think we've got the perfect format for it. Support for self-builders will be there, as you know, hopefully we've got this factory. We're hoping, we're engaging with a company at the moment that are very keen to build a factory on site. So I'm hoping that that would help in a number of ways. We will do whatever we can to support self-builders. We're looking at harvesting some of the timber on site, as well as replanting. We've already planted 27,000 trees in a 100-acre part of the site. We expect to plant about another 90 hectares of trees, of mixed trees on site. So there's still a lot more that we're going to do. So I hope that one answers your question there. Let's see what we got. Can you explain the financial and government structures of the project? Yeah, I wish I could. We've been really, this has been very much a personal journey and a personal voyage of discovery for me. I've run a number of businesses in the past. This has required a huge amount of input from me going forward. The financial governance we have a very open approach to that. In order to get us to where we are right now, we have had to take on board, and fortunately we've got a very good investor who has put money into the project to get us through this first phase, to capitalize us and make sure that we're ready to open up the site and move on. So our intention going forward will be a mixture from a financial point of view. We've gone through the Department of International Trade's Gate 2 process. We're just on the verge of completing that, which puts us in government shop window and opens up investment opportunities from abroad. We've had a number of inquiries about that. So it's an evolving model, if you like, to answer your question. I'm sorry if that sounds a bit vague, but I can't give you any more specific than that at the moment. But we have no doubt at all that there is a lot of interest, and certainly the inquiries we've had from a number of people are very keen to support the project. Next one, is the project intended to be an integrated community with employment on site, or a dormitory of West Cumbria towns? Both. I wouldn't say it would be a dormitory. It's not what I expect it to be. It will be. It will have everything it needs on site. It's our expectation that we'll be providing a school there. I'm hoping that the school that we provide will be a cradle to grave school. So in other words, you come in at one end and you leave at the other. So you won't have to make the transition between little school and big school, as it were. And I'm also keen that we look at other forms of education that have been a lot more successful in other parts of the world, like Finland. I'm speaking from a very personal point of view here. I don't know how achievable that's going to be just yet, but I'm talking to educationalists, and they seem to be very heartened by our approach. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm hoping that what we produce will be an environment, inclusive environment in and of itself, which will cater for itself. So what we want to achieve as well, I didn't mention it before from the site, is that the site will create all of its own power that it needs. We're looking at a significant solar array for the site, and we also looking at obviously geothermal heating for district heating schemes, and various other methods of producing energy. I think that essentially the three that are sustainable, as far as I'm concerned, are solar, wind, and hydro or tidal, and that is something that we're exploring as we're going forward. The other aspects that we want to do is to try to make sure that the site is capable of handling all of its own waste as well. Now, how achievable that's going to be over time, I'm not sure. We're still working on that model. And eventually, I would like to think that the site will also produce a lot of the food that it consumes. So we would look at vertical farming models and various methods of food production. Okay, is the project intended to be an integrated community? Is the project intended to be an integrated community with employment on site, or a dormitory? Oh no, sorry, I've answered that question. Secondly, is the old railway track available for use, for instance, as a guided busway to connect with Workington and other than by private car? Absolutely, I would think it is, and it would be great if we could open up the old railway track. We would obviously have to seek permissions. One of the things that we are looking at for that track at the moment as well is to open that up as the C2C route for cyclists. So we're looking at a potential centre for cycling on the site, with the opportunity of people being able to stay there with their bikes, and it would make a great aspect to using the site for that purposes. Are there any plans to link up the railway to the current network to allow for low carbon transport links? All of that's possible, and it's something that we have looked at and talked to different people about. And I think that depends on the development of the West Coast line, what's going to happen, or the West Cumbria line, and what happens there. But it's very achievable. We do have a lot of the infrastructure still in place in terms of the track beds and so on. So it shouldn't be that difficult to do. It's all a question of the cost and what sort of support we can get going forward in order to do that. Right. Have you checked that insurances will be happy with wooden clad buildings? No, I haven't done yet, and I know given the future that we face into with cladding, it is something that clearly we need to do. If you are referring to any of the slides I've shown you, certainly as far as the straw bales are concerned, they are virtually impossible to burn. And I can take you to the builder of that and show, and he can demonstrate that to you firsthand. Clearly, it's something that we've got to do, and we're not going to build anything that's not going to be insurable and as safe as we can make it. Okay. Straw bale construction is an established method of construction that struggles to be adopted by the mainstream construction. Could this project be used to include such ecological building methods as straw bale, rammed earth, etc., and provide a platform to get these techniques into the mainstream? Absolutely. That's what we want to do. We want this to be a demonstration where people can come and see the different forms of housing that can be achieved. The straw bale house I showed you before has been very successful. It's gone on to be copied, by not copied, but the model has been used very successfully as some quite expensive visitor accommodation up in the Highlands of Scotland. I think it's a natural way for us to go. The designer of the straw bale house that I showed you earlier has also done a model where he's used expanded polystyrene blocks, and the insulation quality is infinitely higher again than the straw bales. So there are a lot of ways in which we can improve what we do and get buildings breathing properly and get them into a lot healthier space than we currently have them. So, yep. Okay, what else we got here? Do you intend to develop transport links between the site and local towns? Yes, we do. That's a quick answer to that one. Have you looked at BT Passive with its flying factory approach and training for builders? No, I haven't. That's a new one on me, but I will look at that online. We are talking to a number of different builders at the moment who have got new and novel ways of doing things, and we're particularly keen to look at building and construction methods that will upskill local local inhabitants and leave the legacy of being able to do that, because clearly building methods are changing very rapidly now, and it surprises me it's taken so long for this to happen, but we hope to accelerate that by what we're doing on site. Where will residents work and how do you see them travelling to and from? Well, I think I've answered that. We're hoping we can provide some jobs on site. We've had a lot of interest from people who are home workers. We got the right sort of broadband connections on site, then I envisage that there may well be quite a number of home workers that will want to live on site. That's certainly been an indicator that we've had already. But we do have local transport networks, and clearly with the number of houses that we're planning, those are going to be very much integrated with what we do. With respect to the governing wheel, is there a conflict between sustainability and growth? No, there's not. There is, if you look at growth in its how we typically look at growth, which is external growth. The growth that we refer to on the governing wheel is very much internal growth. This is about what it is that you are doing that's helped you to grow as an individual internally. And growth is hugely important in terms of measuring our success of what we've done. The problem that we've always had is that we measure our growth externally rather than how it has improved us as human beings and how we've got better at what we do. So I don't see a conflict at all between the two. Okay. Straw bale construction. Okay, we've got that one. On that one. I'm sure the end result will be a very pleasant place to live, but I'm not sure the relevance to the other 76 million who live in mainly large towns and cities already built in the UK. The relevance will be that if you put your mind to it, there are many different ways that you can improve what you've already got. And I'm hoping that the approach that we're taking here, you can call it idealistic. We have the opportunity to demonstrate what is possible when we think about doing things in the right way. And there's a lot more of that thinking going on now. And I had a very good session a year or so ago with a couple of individuals in the House of Lords who are very, very keen to support showing how we can improve what we do. So I don't know whether I've answered your question, but that's right. Okay, let me just see. Here we go. You talked about community being central to design. Did you investigate the optimum number of people within a village or town before deciding on 2,000 homes for settlement one? No, the 2,000 homes would be for the entire site. Settlement one, what we're looking at is to cluster buildings together so that they form their own natural small communities. The work and investigation that I've done and understand is that that number, in order for people to feel a relevance and a sense of kinship with people around them, is around 200. So we're kind of trying to factor that into how we are going ahead with the development, is the answer to that. I haven't spoken to the Ecological Building Society yet, but I am aware that they have, through somebody else, shown an interest in what we're trying to do. I think there's a good opportunity for financing for individuals and developers. I think you're right, because I think we are absolutely ticking the Ecological Building Society's box. So we will be speaking to all the right people at the right time, I hope. Okay. You've mentioned tree planting having occurred already on the site. Have you had an assessment on how the change from a relatively undisturbed site to one of 2,000 plus homes and how it will affect the ecosystem services already present in the local environment? Of course, we are trying to show how we can develop and have managed wilderness side by side, cheek by jowl, so they support one another. One of the things that I'm very keen on and looking at is to have the whole site interlaced with wilderness corridors or rewilded corridors, so that nature can move about the site in the same way that we do. So we're trying to take as much as we can into consideration. The site is very special, and it's got a very interesting history. So we are very keen to encourage as much wildlife as possible. We're managing a red squirrel population there at the moment, and trying to do what we can to improve the maintenance of the red squirrel population, and hopefully eventually my intention will be that we might even become a red squirrel reserve. Okay, so just right, I've got 1 more minute and I've got to wrap up. I'm sorry, it's now 1900 and wrapping up. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm sorry I've run a bit over time. Thank you so much for all of your interest and your questions. It's been great to share this with you, and I hope at some other time I might be able to do this in a more personal way. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and watch this space. We're going somewhere. Bye-bye.